ourselves, not that we don't want to, because everyone in this room wants to make those decisions, and we want to make those decisions easier, and that costs money. Combating homelessness is a huge upfront loaded cost, right? We pay over $520 million as a county every year for the result of homelessness. If you divided that by the 7,000 homeless people that are in the county, we could easily afford to pay rent for them. But we don't, because in order to create the spaces that we can rent, we have to have the money up front. And we don't bring in those externalities into that conversation. Right? The Department for Housing and Mental Services has a budget that is not $520 million because healthcare gets some of it, and the other social welfare programs get some of it. And we lose track of what's actually costing us as taxpayers, what's costing us as neighbors, to the diversity of the system when we can't really determine how we're going to pay for something. Because we're going to pay for it one way or another. Similarly with climate change, this is the annual report that came out of Climate Smart San Jose. Right? Residents, this is the annual cost. Residents in San Jose are going to have to pay $2.7 billion if we don't do anything about climate change. Private sector, 3.1, et cetera, et cetera. This is how they broke it down. And what they're asking is that residents come up with $2.5 billion, right, in order to combat it. This goes into education. So our teachers went on strike. I believe this was 2016, because they're not being paid well. We had LA go on strike last week. Denver's on strike now. South Carolina, Louisiana were on strike last year. We know that our education system is falling apart, and it's because we choose to focus on not paying teachers now, and we don't look at the impact it's going to have on our students in 10 years. If they're going to be less economically productive, they're going to be worse citizens because they don't have proper education, they don't have teachers that can afford to care about them. Money does everything. So I touched on a few of the main ways that it affects us as a county. But there's a myriad of ways that we can use a public bank to make a difference. The Bank of North Dakota provides student loans. It provides low-interest student loans to anyone looking to go to university in the state of North Dakota. Whereas student loan bubble, or the combination of student loans, just became the largest debt, aggregate debt in the country across all sectors. So bigger than credit card debt, right? Bigger than home loan debt. It's massive, and it's going to come back to bite generations to come if we don't fix it. And the only reason is that someone is looking to make money off of our kids going to school. If that's something that our community thinks is important, we could easily provide zero-interest student loans and make up the money somewhere else, somewhere that has a slight higher profitability, something that we can make money now to afford to lend it out. Climate mitigation, infrastructure, education, even the way that we do our public utilities can all benefit from a public bank. Right? We know in San Jose there's two water companies. There's the San Jose Water Company, a for-profit private entity, and then there's the San Jose Municipal Water Company. Municipal Water Company is on the east side, because that's where San Jose Water Company couldn't make as much money. It's less wealthy over there. And yet all of their water is cleaner and cheaper than people that live in a place where they're serviced by the San Jose Water Company, the for-profit institution. And the last 5 decades of privatization have been for what reason? They've been for upfront costs. We understand, cities understand that their infrastructure is deteriorating. They don't have the money to pay for it. They don't have the political will to raise a bond. So if someone comes in and says, you sell it to me, I'll make the upfront investment. But you have to mandate that I make money every year from now on. And so when you go to the city of San Jose, under their hearings where they talk about what they're going to let San Jose Water Company make annually, they are mandated a profit. And that's only because we couldn't afford the upfront costs. You can start to municipalize a lot of the things that really damage our ability to be equitable across our community. Things like internet access. Right? Things like home loans, where you're much more likely to be able to get an affordable home loan in one side of the city than you are in the other. Right? We can start to create infrastructure that lets people and communities work together to decide what is appropriate for them, what is the priority for funding, and then move forward from there.
I looked at my last water bill, San Jose Water. They have a service charge was $64. The water was $12. So I called them up. The service charge depends on the meter, pipe size. Ours was 3/4. I said, we don't only need a 1/2-inch pipe. He said, we no longer have that. We have 3/4, 1, and 1 1/2. And the price, of course, goes way up to the service charge. It has nothing to do with the price of the water. And they buy their water from the water district.
Yep.
And it's a ripoff.
It's huge. I mean, if you look at your San Jose water bill, I don't know how many people are under San Jose water, but there's like 9 taxes and fees. And I did some research and looked at someone's bill from San Jose Municipal. They have 2 charges, water and connection. That's it. And now, as of like last week, I believe, San Jose Water Company is planning a giant merger with Connecticut Water.
Connecticut. Well, it's a ripoff.
It's people consolidating our public infrastructure and our public resources to make profit. And we've had trouble stopping that because when it comes to doing the upfront investment needed to keep those as public entities, we haven't been able to find the money. So this is our organizational pledge, right? Our strategy is to go to organizations in the Bay Area, specifically Santa Clara County, San Jose, Santa Cruz, and get them to sign on and support. We have, over the last year, have gathered about 15 organizations that have signed on to say public banking meets our goals as a group, whether it's environment, whether it's anti-war, whether it's healthcare. Santa Clara County Single Payer Coalition just signed on 2 weeks ago. We understand how taking control of finance is important to creating a community that is focused on the right things. And so they've signed on. There are 2 avenues that we're tackling. Right? There's state law that makes it challenging to create a public bank. Not impossible, but it's not set up that way. The law is set up to create private institutions that are for profit. And so we're trying to tweak that. So SDPA, the organization that our public banking group is acting out of, is a partner with the California Public Banking Alliance. And we work with them to talk to state legislators and lawyers and get a bill passed that's hopefully going to be introduced in the next 2 weeks here. We have 20-page text. A lot of it's ironed out. We're just trying to focus on getting a final author that is ready to move forward. We have lots of people that are interested in co-sponsoring, a lot of local support as well, from LA to Oakland to SF to Humboldt County, Santa Rosa. There's, I think, 11 organizations that are in 11 different cities that are part of this alliance. And then locally, what we want is a bank here. We understand that the $7 billion that the city of Santa Clara, or the county of Santa Clara has, the $9 billion that the city of San Jose has, and the $1 billion that Saratoga has, Cupertino has, Sunnyvale has, is a huge amount of money, and it's currently funding things that we have no control over. A lot of them are in banks like Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, that fund fossil fuel projects, that engage in predatory lending practices. Right? Wells Fargo just last year was hit with a huge scandal where they were creating fake accounts so that they could make more money off of people. Bank of America should have been destroyed in 2008 when they were caught predatory lending on homeowners, and evicting on them prematurely. We fund all of that. Our tax dollars keep that alive.
That's free enterprise.
In a way, yeah, it's free. Taxpayers are paying for someone else's profit.
Well, you know, my bank, I have my money in the bank, but I get 0 interest.
Yeah.
Now, there's no reason for me to have it. I could bury the money in the backyard, I guess, and it would make no difference. It's just the convenience for writing a check. So all these banks have money for loans from people who are putting their money in the bank, but they're not getting any interest back. So what's the point?
They've set up a really good system. Right? They talk about not being able, if you put it under your mattress, interest is going to go up, you're going to actually lose buying power. Right? These are pervasive strategies that, while they're based in truth, scare people into doing something better with their money. Right? If you're worried that making 2% under a socially responsible index is actually going to lose your family money, you can't do it. So they've made being a good citizen, being a good neighbor, costly. Right? So what can you guys do? You can learn more. There's a bunch of websites that talk about what public banking is. There's websites that talk about how to get involved. So the California Public Banking Alliance is what I mentioned we're a part of, focusing on statewide legislation. If you have friends down in LA that want to get involved, if you have friends up in Humboldt County that want to get involved, that's where you point them. It would direct them to the organization that's in their locale.
Is Trump supporting this?
Trump hasn't mentioned anything about public banking, but it has been mentioned in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal. So part of the way that she thinks we can fund a transition to a renewable energy economy is with a network of public banks. You can go South Bay Progressive Alliance organization is what I'm here speaking on behalf of. That's southbaypa.org. We have a bunch of action teams that do work in the community, climate, electoral, education, and then public banking. And that's how you get in touch with me if you thought this was something you wanted to learn more about, or if you thought it was something you want to get involved in, or if you want to sign our online petition. We talked about signing the Pledge of Support as an organization. So whether it's Sierra Club or another organization that you're involved in, a lot of us sometimes have 3 or 4 organizations that we check in on, do work for, bring it up, or ask me to come and bring it up. And that helps us grow our support. When we go and talk to legislators and say, we have 20, no, we have 30, no, we have 50 organizations that are all locally based, that think this is a good idea, that meets their mission statements, it's extremely powerful. And the side to that is individual signatures. So I have paper petitions in the back, and there's a petition online that you can sign on, where it's just residents, it's constituency support. If I have to go and talk with a state legislator and say, there are 500 people in your district that think this is a good idea, and it's a topic that most people don't even know about, that's a huge benefit. I was reading Anna Eshu's monthly newsletter just last week. 120 emails about the wall, about the border wall. That was it for a woman that represents 100,000 people. If we came to her and said, we've got 500 emails in support of public banking, that's almost 5 times what she gets on a regular basis that is quote unquote supposed to drive her legislative policy. At a local level, these politicians don't get a lot of public input, which gives us even more power locally. If Anna Eshu only gets 120 emails, how many emails do you think the mayor of San Jose gets? 20? 30? Us in this room would be a significant impact on his inbox in the morning if he woke up and we all told him we want a public bank. So locally we have the most power. And that's also why we want to make banks, public banks, local. If it's a state bank, and a lot of people advocate for state banks, that's what North Dakota runs off of. North Dakota only has about 1 million people, so they're about the same size as the city of San Jose anyway. The State Bank of California would be the largest bank in the world. And that's scary. It's hard to influence. It could do if there was a Bank of California. Would be. Would be.
This would be public.
If we created a public bank at the state level, it would be the largest in the world. Some people understand that that's powerful if it's done in a democratic way.
But again, all the funds that a bank has are from people putting money in the bank.
Correct.
At zero interest.
For the most part, yeah.
They have to make enough profit, I agree, to pay off the staff. But then I don't understand, I would get nothing for having my money unless I want a loan for a house, for example. And I'm willing to pay extra for that to repay it. And I have to have a job to repay it. But normally I would see no use for the bank.
Yep.
Except for wanting to borrow money on a relatively short term, and I would pay it back. But their money has to be from everybody. Why would we want to put our money in the bank in the first?
Exactly. And so why cities, why local governments were targeted for divestment was that it's a large sum of money. It makes a statement, it makes an impact. Right? I'm sure a lot of you have heard that there are people working to divest CalPERS and CalSTRS, some of the largest pensions in the world, definitely the 2 largest in the state. Right? And there's pushback on that because there are people invested in having that money come to them.
Is there a nexus between pension funds and public banking? Could there be one? Because there's a lot of money there too.
Yeah, I mean, a pension fund could go into a bank if it made the right interest. The reason that pension funds go in are distributed across mutual funds is someone thinks that that's a more lucrative way, that they're going to get a higher return.
Well, what do they do with the pension fund?
They disperse them over mutual funds that invest in companies.
They can invest in mutual funds and pay you back from the fund.
Yeah.
But the money is taken out of your paycheck.
Right. And I mean, that's how all money works, right? It either comes out of your paycheck as taxes, or as Social Security, or you purposefully put it somewhere. And as long as you're not currently spending with it, it is making somebody money somewhere.
Well, where's the government putting the Social Security that we pay for the people?
Social Security is an interesting one. It's kind of like a pay-as-you-go strategy, right? The money goes in and it goes out at the same time, and
so the government doesn't really reinvest. It's coming in and going out about the same rate.
I don't know if it's about the same rate, but I'm only 28. I haven't really looked into Social Security that much yet. Kai, you had a question.
I'm just gonna ask, because I've been wondering, like 10 years from now, what is this gonna look like? You know, will we have a Bank of LA networking with the Bank of Oakland and Bank of San Francisco, Bank of San Jose, and then we have maybe, 20 or 30 public banks. Is there any kind of envisioning for the next step? You know, we're having startups all the time here in California. So if somebody wants to invest in a mutual fund that's strictly green companies that are based here in California, can we start our own exchange? Has anyone thought about that?
Yeah, and you can do it multiple ways. So that's already happening. There are exchanges that you can put your own money in that invest in green startups. They're just like you would divest your own personal finances. There are those options, and there's more and more of them growing every day. Where public banking would be 10 years in the future is really more about a healthy, low-growth economy. North Dakota was the only state to not go in the red in 2008. And it's because they didn't put their state money in institutions that were engaging in kind of very speculative lending practices. They engaged their money locally with their neighbors, people that they knew, trusted, that were accountable. And they fared really well. And that's because diversity is a healthy economy. When you have small loans to many people, you get less booms and busts. The reason we have massive crashes is because a few institutions are holding the majority of the money, and a few people are holding the majority of the money. Yes?
Where do credit unions fit in all this?
Great question. So there are a couple of models, right? A public bank can do a lot of things, and it doesn't have to do everything. The way